I'm Katie Rimley. Welcome to Crash Course U.S. History. Today we're going to be talking about the history of women's activism.
Miss Rimley, why do women need activism? Didn't Beyonce say girls run this world?
Oh, me from the past. That hasn't always been the case. The reason we have many women running the world today is due to the strong-willed women of the past. Women's activism has its roots in the beginning of the U.S. nation. Anne Hutchinson in the early 1600s sharply challenged Puritan orthodoxy. She was a believer of antinomianism, which stated that those who were truly saved need not bother to obey the law of either God or man. She had gotten these ideas from John Cotton, but these ideas were considered heresy. She claimed to have a direct revelation from God, and that, unlike many of the ministers in the area, she was saved. This strongly undermined all of the authority of the church and led her to be banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, after which she was sent to Rhode Island. She did not let the expectations of society confine her life and her beliefs. Another prominent figure in women's activism in the early years of the nation was Abigail Adams. In 1776, she writes to her husband John Adams asking him to remember the ladies in the new code of laws. She was one of the first advocates of women's equal education and property rights. She believed women should take more part in decisions rather than just simply serve their husbands. She believed women should educate themselves and be a moral guide for the family.
As said by Gerda Lerner, women have always made history as much as men have, not contributed to it, only they did not know what they had made and had no tools to interpret their own experience. What's new at this time is that women are fully claiming their past and shaping the tools by means of which they can interpret it.
Mary Wollstonecraft in 1792 publishes The Vindication of the Rights of Women in England, which argued that men and women should have equal rights and equal opportunities. There are many other early forms of women's activism, one of which is in 1834 with the foundation of the New York Female Moral Reform Society. The purpose of this society was to educate and warn others, especially young women, to avoid those who took part in licentious behavior. They hoped to abandon and reform the abandoned women or the prostitutes of New York City, in a great part by going door to door to preach the gospel. The society also distributed pamphlets and information regarding the state affairs of the city to gain more middle-class support for the cause. Also, in 1834, the Factory Girls Association staged a strike at the mills in Lowell, Massachusetts. In 1834, the market hit a little lull. Mill owners decided to pass on their declining profits to their mill workers by imposing a 15 to 20% wage cut. The mill women banded together, but the mill owners retaliated by firing the women who held meetings to organize and protest. After the firings, the mill girls took to the streets in protest and held a strike against the mill owners. Although the strike was not successful because the owners could do without the workers who decided to strike, it set a future for strikes against factories and women's rights. In 1840, Elizabeth Cady Stanton attends the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London and is turned away by male organizers, standing up for what she believed was right. The Seneca Falls Convention was the first women's rights convention in the U.S., which took place in Seneca Falls, New York. It happened on July 19th and 20th, 1848. There were 300 people there, plus 40 men. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott were the two main advocates at the convention. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was the daughter of a lawyer, and she married an abolitionist. She was a member of the American Slave Society and was an advocate of the New York State Married Women's Property Bill, which allowed women to keep property, keep wages, and retain guardianship of their children. Lucretia Mott was part of the Society of Friends, which is also known as the Quakers. She was also a part of the Female Anti-Slavery Society, and she attended the Anti-Slavery Convention of American Women in 1837. At the Seneca Falls Convention, the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions was laid out. It was patterned on the Declaration of Independence, and it is the charges of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of men towards women, and it laid out the unfair laws on separation and divorce. It also stated the inequality in religion, education, and employment for women. It opened by saying, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." It then goes on to say, "The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man towards woman, having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her."
Like the Seneca Falls Convention, women began taking active roles among social reform movements. Jane Addams founded the Hull House in Chicago. The purpose of this institution was to provide support mostly for immigrants living among poor conditions in the city. Another prominent movement was the Women's Christian Temperance Movement. This movement voiced the opinion of many women against the consumption of alcohol. Women believed that drinking alcohol promoted crime and domestic violence. Carrie Nation was a radical voice among the movement. She inspired many women to start voicing their own opinions among a male-dominated society. The Women's Christian Temperance Movement laid the foundation for prohibition that would later be instated in the Constitution with the 18th Amendment. Other women like Dorothea Dix brought about a positive change to mental institutions. These women not only accomplished their purposes for social change for others, they accomplished social change for themselves.
On August 18, 1920, the states ratified the 19th Amendment, giving all women the right to vote. Also in the 1920s, flappers, northern, urban, young, single, middle-class women became popular. Many held steady jobs as clerks or phone operators and also in department stores. They frequented speakeasies, vaudeville shows, and jazz clubs, were smokers and drinkers like their male counterparts, and were much more likely to experiment sexually. Most cut their hair shoulder length or shorter, and knee-length hemlines and high heels became the norm. There was a large boom in the makeup industry because of this, and this female declaration of independence was seen as not an act to please men, but an act to please themselves.
The dogma of woman's complete historical subjugation to men must be rated as one of the most fantastic myths ever created by the human mind, as said by Mary Ritter Beard. Oh, Stan, did you put that in here just because it said myth? Sorry, that's the wrong kind of myth. No dragons in this one.
Now it's time for the mystery document. If I'm right, I'm right. But if I'm wrong, I have to drink this lemon juice. Women must have her freedom, the fundamental freedom of choosing whether or not she will be a mother and how many children she will have. Regardless of what man's attitude may be, that problem is hers, and before it can be his, it is hers alone. She goes through the veil of death alone each time a babe is born. As it is the right of neither of man nor the state to coerce her into this ordeal, so it is her right to decide whether she will endure it. Well, that's most likely talking about abortion. No, not abortion. Birth control. So Margaret Sanger.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, good. I don't have to drink that stuff. Margaret Sanger was a birth control activist of the 20th century. She became pro-birth control as she watched her mother die at 50 years old from tuberculosis after becoming very weak from having 11 children and 7 miscarriages. She coined the term birth control and was arrested in 1916 for opening the first birth control clinic. She started the organization that eventually evolved into Planned Parenthood. This achievement was not enough for her as she still dreamed of the magic pill. Tired of waiting, she found scientist Gregory Pincus and research sponsor, the company International Harvest, and developed the first FDA-approved birth control pill, Onvoid, in 1960.
The role of women in today's society is still continuing to advance. For example, look at Hillary Clinton. She's running for president. Who knows what will happen next? Thanks for watching. See you again next time.